Well, hey, Lifehouse Church, welcome to Wednesday night devotion. Can you believe it is December already? I absolutely, where did this year go? I was talking with someone yesterday and I said, hey, we're working on the 2020 budget for next year. And I just caught myself and I was like, I can't believe that just came out of my mouth. I'm like 2 years behind on my internal calendar. I don't know what's going on. Happy December. We are barreling down toward the end of the year. This is going to be, one of the last Wednesday night devotions of the year. We've only got two more left for the year, and thank you guys so much for joining us and sticking with us, through this. I hope that these times are of some benefit to your walk with God. We've been kind of really going through the chronological Bible, and it's been a lot of fun for me personally, and honestly, these nights help keep me accountable to that, so I'm appreciative for them for at least that reason. But I know many of you, tune in, and even if not during when this airs initially, you catch it later. And I'm just really grateful for this time that we get to spend together. Today in my reading, I was in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, and this is a really interesting passage of Scripture. Paul is really rebutting against some false apostles and false prophets that had gotten into the church at Corinth. And these people were boasting, that they had some super resume. Paul jokingly calls them super apostles. And they were causing trouble in the church at Corinth. And they were saying things about Paul and his associates that weren't true. They were accusing Paul of being greedy and taking advantage of the church. And so 2 Corinthians in chapter 11 and chapter 12, you really see Paul's defense of himself and his ministry to the people at Corinth. And Paul is not a subtle guy. He doesn't pull punches. And so in 2 Corinthians 11 and 12, Paul just lays out what he's done and that he has not taken advantage of the church. He's not even really asked the church for any money or any support, that he is there because of his love for the church. But it's really interesting in chapter 11, Paul he starts to go on a rant, and he says, look, you want to talk about people, you want to talk about credentials, you want to talk about proof in the pudding, Paul says, let me tell you about my resume. Let me lay out my credentials for you. And he says, anything that these people say they are, they say they're Jewish and they say they're descendants of Abraham, they say they're followers of Jesus. Paul says, I'm that and then some. I'm that and all. I've got all the proof. I've got all the pedigree you could ever want. Because he was just, the really an up and comer in the Jewish religion, as a Pharisee, and that's what Paul was when he was Saul, before he converted. And so we really see in Paul's life in chapter 11, he talks about all the times he was persecuted for the gospel, and beaten, and shipwrecked, and imprisoned, and all of this. And he's laying out his case to the Corinthians. And then in chapter 12, it gets really interesting. And so chapter 12, Paul says, I've even received special revelation from God. God has shown me things, and he's not allowed me to share what he's shown me. But man, if I told you about that, it would just blow your mind what I've seen. And so in chapter 12, Paul lays out, look, guys, God's even shown me some stuff that is just way out there, but I can't share that with you. And then Paul says something that I think is just so interesting, and this is the part I just want to share with you guys tonight. Starting in verse 7, it says, therefore, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan, to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. This is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weakness, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. If you've been in church for a while, you may have heard this passage before. So Paul is saying, in order for me to stay humble, God gave me this thorn in my flesh, this messenger from Satan. There's a lot of debate theologically about what that could possibly be. Some say it was a person opposed him. Some say it was a physical ailment. Some believe that it was Paul losing his eyesight, that Paul was going blind, and he was pleading with God to restore his eyesight. Whatever it is, there's a theme that I want us to pick up here, and that's a theme of pride and humility. Paul is saying that I rejoice in my weakness because it keeps me humble. Now, when we think of pride and we think of humility, I think when we think of pride, man, we think of that guy that's just full of himself. He thinks he's God's gift to this planet. He's cocky, he's arrogant, he thinks he's better than everyone else. And we think of that as pride. When we think of humility, we think of someone who's like, oh, I'm not that great. And, oh, everyone's better than me. And I'm just this meek little guy. And I'm not that good. And I've got nothing to offer. I want to give you just a quick working definition of pride and humility. Now, before I get to that, this is really important because pride and humility is a theme that we see all throughout Scripture. In fact, in Scripture, it says that God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Now, if my pride and my humility are something that get me either in opposition to God or get grace from God, that's a pretty big deal. That's pretty important. And so we see pride, part of Lucifer falling from heaven. Why? Because of his pride. And you see all throughout Scripture that pride is one of those things. You read through the Psalms and you read through the Proverbs. God does not like pride. Pride is one of God's triggers. It's just something about pride that really gets at him. But once again, I think our definition of pride and humility can be a little out of whack, because pride isn't just arrogance and cockiness and I'm better than everyone else, and humility isn't just I'm nothing, I'm trash, everyone's better than me. Those are really shallow definitions of pride and humility. What I think and what we see from Paul's writing here is a great definition of pride is simply this. Pride is self-reliance. Pride is self-reliance. It's you relying on your own strength, your own abilities, your own power, your own intellect, your own plans, your own schemes, your own ability to try to get things done. And humility is God reliance. Humility is relying on God through every trial, through every circumstance, through every situation. And when we really understand this, that God opposes the proud but gives grace to the humble, let's say that in a different way. God opposes those who rely totally on themselves, but he gives grace to those who rely totally on him. And Paul is saying here, and this is why this is so important. He says in verse 10, this is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in my weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties, for when I'm weak, then I'm strong. Because of his understanding of what humility is, that humility is total dependence upon God, realizing I don't have the strength, I don't have the power, I don't have the ability, so I rely totally on the one who does. He says, then I'm able to rejoice when stuff starts going wrong. I'm able to rejoice when things get hard. I'm able to rejoice when I don't get my way. I'm able to rejoice even when my prayers don't get answered. Because he just says a few verses up, man, I prayed for this over and over again. God simply said, my grace is enough for you. My strength is made perfect in your weakness. How crazy is that? What is that? That is humility. It's saying, God, okay, I'm weak right now. I don't have a lot of strength, God. There's things that I want to be better in my life. There's areas where I'm weak. There's areas of my life that are difficult, that are hard. Nothing is perfect in my life right now. And God, instead of complaining and instead of wishing things were better, God, I'm going to be thankful because it keeps me humble. And once again, what does that mean when it keeps me humble? It keeps me relying upon you. It keeps me relying upon the power of God and not upon my own power. So many times, what success and prosperity and when everything goes right, it can make us proud. Once again, you may say, well, I wouldn't be, if everything was going great, I would be very humble. I wouldn't be like, oh, this is all me and it's all my... But what pride does, once again, is it gets us just to rely on ourselves. How much easier is it to rely on ourselves when the bank account is full and the pantry is full and there's no cares and there's no worries and everyone's healthy and everyone's doing great? Even without realizing it, we can slip in to self-reliance. We can slip in to just relying on ourselves and relying on our own resources and trusting in that. And our security comes from that and our sense of foundation comes from the fact that everything is well. What Paul's saying is, in the hard times, it's when I really experience humility. It's when I really experience, God, this is all you. God, I would totally rely upon you. Once again, pride is self-reliance. Humility is God-reliance. And so whatever situation you're going through, maybe you're in a situation right now where there's a health issue, or maybe there's a situation right now where there's a resource issue, and you don't know where the resources are going to come from. Maybe there's an issue right now with a relationship issue, and there's struggle in relationship, and you want, God, I just want you to fix it. I just want you to make it better. I just want you to come through. Just remove the thorn in the flesh, God. Remove this messenger of Satan. Hopefully you're not thinking of that relationship issue, that person as a messenger of Satan, but you just want the situation to get better. I just want to encourage you. Maybe the situation that you're walking through right now is something that's building humility within you, because humility is relying upon God. It's saying, God, it's not about my power. It's not about my resources, but it's about your strength made perfect in my weakness. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us today. Hey, Sunday we kick off our brand new series, Merry and Bright, as Christmas at Lifehouse kicks off in full effect. We got some cool stuff happening at Lifehouse Worship. There's going to be a special instrumentalist that is joining us Sunday. I heard them practicing. It's really cool. It's a lot of fun. You're really going to enjoy it. Sunday, 9:30 or 11 o'clock, children's ministry happening at 11. Thank you guys so much. Have a great week. We will see you Sunday.